we are extremely proud and delighted with the result of the Bartlett Crossing project, also known as the Macon Homes project, because it has transformed about 10 acres, more or less, of devastated, abandoned, blighted, dilapidated structures into 75 new single-family residences that are really wonderful. It has transformed that area. The city played a major role in that, but we partnered with the Macon Housing Authority, and they really are due a majority of the credit for making it happen. What the city did was we asked the Macon Housing Authority to get involved. They said, we've looked at this before, the numbers don't quite work, we can't pay the cost of the demolition, and we can't use HUD money to pay for demolition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we began to look, and then the city received a grant of about $1.5 million for neighborhood stabilization. It's called NSP money. And so we found out that this NSP money could be used to pay for demolition. We went back to the Housing Authority, and that provided the bridge so that with other housing tax credits that they were able to get and selling the tax credits, et cetera, this piece provided the bridge that they needed. So they put together this project and tore down, demolished the old Macon homes, and built back these 75 single-family residences. It's just absolutely wonderful. And another one of the partners that was instrumental in making this happen was the Lizzie Chapel Baptist Church and Reverend Tony. They've been working in that area through their in-house 501c3 organization called Maocn Ministries, which is a community housing development organization, a CHODO, which is recognized by HUD as being able to use some HUD funds. They've partnered with this. They're delighted with it. They've been a key factor in helping with the neighborhood support of the project to get it off the ground.
We were aware of the old Macon Homes development for many, many years. It was vacant, it was abandoned, it had been offered to us by the owners, investors out of Columbus. We had looked it over from one end to the other and had decided several times that it was infeasible. It really needed to come down for the benefit of the community, but we couldn't see how a development on that site could possibly be viable. Then Lizzie Chapel Church, which created Maocn Ministries, and the city of Macon came up with a viable plan for the revitalization of that neighborhood. A key part of that plan was taking down the old Macon homes and developing replacement housing on the site. In the context of that plan, we could see how it would work, and we became very interested in the project. And so we worked with the city, we worked with Lizzie Chapel and Maocn Ministries as they were developing this plan. But we still had one huge problem. We could figure out how to basically finance the housing. What we could not figure out how to do was to do the acquisition of the old property, the demolition of Macon homes, the environmental remediation, and all the infrastructure that was required. That required a huge infusion of money, almost $4 million. The way we approached that was serendipity or providence or whatever you want to call it. Stimulus money became available. We helped the city of Macon put together an application for one round of stimulus money. That paid for the demolition, environmental remediation, and part of the infrastructure. And then we got a second round of stimulus money from the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, which finished off the infrastructure and helped us to make the deal feasible. In that context, it worked, and it is really, really paying dividends now. The total tab was steep. The real estate part of the deal, the vertical construction and the financing and the soft costs and all that, is around $13 million. But that does not include the stimulus funds that we got for the demolition, environmental remediation, and infrastructure. Very expensive project, mainly because of all of that work that had to be done before we could even start on construction of the housing. The impact on the neighborhood, of course, is huge. Remember, we would not have been there had it not been for Lizzie Chapel Church and their creation of Maocn Ministries. We had looked at the property again and again and again, and it was just a disaster. We thought this could be a regular Vietnam. It didn't become viable until Lizzie Chapel and Maocn Ministries led this community planning effort. The city of Macon helped enormously. The city of Macon came up with some money that Maocn Ministries used to hire Georgia Tech to lead a community-based planning process. I was honored to participate in that planning process. The most important thing, though, that citizens need to realize is that what we call Bartlett Crossing, the 75-unit multifamily housing development, the important thing to remember about this is that what we call Bartlett Crossing, the 75-unit development, is only a part of the larger Bartlett Crossing. That's the surrounding neighborhood. We were brought in to execute the demolition and the replacement housing part of the plan, but that's only part of the plan. And we wouldn't have even been there had we not been recruited to take care of that part of the plan. All 75 houses at Bartlett Crossing are single family in configuration on quarter-acre lots in residential neighborhoods, but they're being rented for now. The low-income housing tax credit requires us to hold them in rental status for 15 years. But we're setting it up so that we can sell them at the end of the tax credit holding period. That's why the individual lots in the single family houses. The intent, of course, would be to make them affordable, and particularly to make them affordable for long-term residents. The intent is to work it out so that people who've lived there, paid their rent on time, took care of the property, done the kinds of things that they need to do to qualify themselves for home ownership, when it came time for them to buy, would make them a deal. Well, the impact on the local economy was huge. We had 4 general contracts. 3 of them were awarded to local companies. 2 of those were to minority-owned companies. The big general contract for the actual construction of the houses went to an out-of-town contractor, but most of the subcontracts came from right here in Macon in the Middle Georgia area. It included millions of dollars worth of subcontracts that went to competitive, locally owned, minority-owned businesses and other minority-owned businesses from Macon in the region. As far as employment's concerned, we know that as of today, over 400 individual people have been employed on that job at one time or another. It's probably the equivalent of about somewhere in the neighborhood of 125 to 150 full-time jobs for a year. When the economy's down and unemployment is high and businesses scrapping to earn an honest dollar, this is a godsend to them. When we first started working with the city and with Lizzie Chapel and Maocn Ministries, gosh, somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.5 or 5 years ago, the actual putting together of the deal began about 2 years ago. We got a construction start late last year. The good news is the construction is actually ahead of schedule, and as we're speaking right now in September, within another couple of months it'll be finished. But the process for revitalizing the entire neighborhood, of course, will go on for years and years after that. It's an important thing that people need to remember, especially elected officials that have to run for office once every 4 years or once every 2 years. The process of revitalization of a neighborhood takes very often 10 years or more, and it takes an enormous amount of foresight and persistence and determination. Most people are ready to give up just about the time you've got your momentum going, but what needs to happen is that folks who have a good plan just need to stay after it relentlessly until it's done. The real question about whether we're going to succeed or not is whether the rest of the revitalization takes place. And there, we're counting on our partners, the city, Lizzie Chapel, Maocn Ministries, to follow through. There's already been some good work done. Several houses have been acquired and demolished that needed to come down. Manna Ministries already has title to some property that they plan to develop as single-family housing. So we've got a good start, but it's a process that will play itself out over several years. And the Macon Housing Authority is not the lead partner in that. We're the guys who were brought in to do the Bartlett Crossing development. The city and the other partners take care of the surrounding neighborhood.